Welcome to the Mechanical Room. A Centrotherm production focusing on all things in and around the HVAC industry. And now, your hosts, Michael Sokaris and Matthew Pryce.
Greetings, technicians, engineers, installers, wholesale distributors, and anyone in the HVAC space and beyond. This is the Mechanical Room, Episode 3. My name is Matthew Pryce, and along with my host, Michael Sokaris, we are here to bring you everything in and around the Mechanical Room. Michael, welcome to Episode 3. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, Matthew. How are you? I'm excited to be back for Episode 3.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Things look pretty busy there. I see a spider web on your whiteboard behind you. Busy time here in the HVAC industry. I take it.
Yes, it is. Very busy. There's a lot of exciting things going on in the world of HVAC, and in particular around polypropylene UL 1738 venting systems. We're excited. It's going to be a good year.
That's a fact, and it's coming from every angle on all the websites and all the magazines. I mean, it's pretty much everywhere. There's a lot going on.
Indeed.
And that makes it actually kind of a perfect segue into, let's get right into the contest this month, because we had a couple of entries, and we're actually going to discuss a little bit of a runner-up before we give away the prize for the big job today, because we had a couple of entries, and there's a couple of things that are worth noting, Michael. So shall we show us the pipe, show us your pipe, show all the pipe? That's what we're doing right now.
It was tough. That's why it was tough to pick this month. That's why we have a first place and a runner-up. So we'll do the honors of sharing our selections for the month for the swag pack.
Absolutely. And actually, just because we're so generous, we're gonna all participants named here will have some Centrotherm logo signage coming their way. Baseball cap, I think, is good. We're going towards springtime, so put the winter hats away till it starts getting cool again, and let's bust out the ball caps. So first runner up this month, and naturally, if you guys are listening to the podcast, check it out on YouTube as well, because you can see these posts and these photos on the YouTube clip, but I will of course link in the description as well. So out of Bucks County, PA. It's a really nice Bradford white installation here. I was tempted to give them the top spot this month because I just love that diamond plate.
Can I interrupt real quick?
Sure.
Is diamond plate a prerequisite for you in your voting criteria? It seems like you mention it all the time.
It's certainly, I think it really, I like the mirrored element. There's a chromeness to it that really gives it kind of a BA kind of look to the Mechanical Room itself. I mean, it's sharp. There are other people out there that do stuff like LEDs, and our friend Terrence, who was on last month rather. He's got nice gold stickers that he'll put on stuff, and he'll spray paint stuff gold. So everybody's got their signature move, but the diamond plate is kind of tried and true. And this particular
equipment stand out too, which gives it a little bit more polish, if you will. No pun intended.
Absolutely. Right. Exactly. And it's cool looking, and it fits nicely in the room. If they made that like rivet board, that would look cool too, but the diamond plate works very well. I mean, all the tough guys have that kind of stuff on the back of their pickup truck. They have like the little bed the cabinetry or whatever has that plate on it. It's cool. I like it. And that's why I really did want to mention Larry Shoemaker and Deluxe Plumbing and Heating out of Bethlehem, PA. This is a cool little setup here with this Bradford white. You can see that they've done a great job with all the other stuff that's involved in this job as well. There's Calefi on this, there's Taco products on this stuff. It's a high-end job that came out of an FW Web in Bucks County, PA. These photos came to us through Anthony Rykow, who works there at FW Web. So thanks to everybody involved there. We're going to send some shirts around to all those guys. So now, drum roll please, the winner of this month. And there's some details that even Mr. Mike Sokaris doesn't know yet.
Okay.
The contractors, usually I call and I try to get who the contractor is. And the coolest part of this installation is there is no contractor this time around, right? So I was floored when I heard that. I know you're like all confused, right? So I called up Bryce V. He's the account manager at RM Cotton in Minnesota. He was the account manager on this project along with David Sivanovich, who's the technician who helped these guys get this together. Right now, typically you get all your stuff, you get your specs, you get your pipe, you get a mechanical contractor in there to put this together. Not these guys, at the Minnesota Valley Power Co-op out in Minnesota. So basically, a utility company. It's just jam-packed with their own engineers. They said, you know what? We're going to install the best, and we're going to do it ourselves. So that's what this is. This is 3 wall-hung Riello boilers. They did the Inaflu intake and the exhaust together. It's all neat. It's all clean. I called up Bryce at RM Cotton. I was like, all right, tell me a little bit more about this stuff. And he couldn't. He's like, they all sourced all the material themselves. They did all the engineering themselves. They did everything themselves. We just provided the pipe to them. I mean, I thought that was pretty fascinating. We don't really typically see that. You know, there's a lot, gas-fired appliances. It's a life safety product. I mean, even contractors sub out the gas work.
At home, unless you're an engineer and follow the directions.
Exactly, right? So so the winners this month are the folks at the Minnesota Valley Power Co-op who did their own engineering and made this beautiful mechanical room themselves. So great job out of them. Great job out of RM Cotton. We love to see this sort of thing. As always, please tag your pictures on Instagram, on Facebook, on LinkedIn with Show Us Your Pipe. Tag the mechanical room, tag Centrotherm, and if you don't know what you're doing, consult an engineer before you put in a common vent system. So not everybody can.
When we were looking through these pictures to pick the winner, I did like this one because both the intake and the exhaust were done in polypropylene, which is, a nice touch. The other thing was that and something that I always look at and something that I always recommend to mechanical contractors is make sure you install it properly and you support the product properly. And they did a real nice job. So they followed the directions as a good engineer would. They followed the directions and installed it with the proper support. So hats off to those guys.
Yes, absolutely. So you'll be on the lookout for some ball caps and some Centrotherm t-shirts and stickers and stuff coming your way. So nice work, folks. And that's Show Us Your Pipe for the March episode 3 edition. And we'll be right back with a very special guest, Talbot Gee, CEO of HARDI. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Mechanical Room. And for episode 3, we're going to bring in an old friend of both Michael and myself and Centrotherm. The CEO of HARDI, Talbot Gee, is our guest here. Now, maybe HARDI is new to you. I'd like to describe HARDI just a quick bit. HARDI is the voice in wholesale distribution within the HVACR industry. HARDI members market, distribute, and support heating, air conditioning, and refrigeration equipment, parts, and supplies. HARDI distributor members serve installations and service replacement contractors in residential and commercial markets, as well as commercial, industrial, and institutional maintenance staffs, and so much more. Obviously, I stole that bio directly from HARDINET.or. You can go and find out a lot more about HARDI at their website. Talbot himself is the CEO. He's been with HARDI for 10 plus years, where he's moved up the ladder to the top spot. You will see him on stage at all of the conferences, spinning the yarn, telling the jokes at the top, introducing the keynote speakers, but he's also a very approachable guy, wandering through the events. That's where I've gotten to know him over the years, and he is our guest for episode 3. So, Michael, why don't you welcome in our guest?
Welcome, Talbot. It's a pleasure to see you, even via video. It's always better to do it in person. So thank you for agreeing to be part of the Mechanical Room. We are very privileged to have you. We think that at Centrotherm, we think that you guys provide a wonderful service to the industry. And I guess that's the premise of my first question, which is, in your own words, without the kind of the structured statement that Matthew kicked off with. In your own words, what does HARDI do in the industry for the HVAC industry?
Yeah, you got it. Well, first off, I'm honored. I'm privileged to be on this. I think it's so cool what you're doing. I mean, this is really neat. You guys and you've done it with great production value and everything. That's terrific. And what we learned in 2020 is content is king, but there is no one media, right? So you got to have a whole bunch of different ways to get your content out there. And I love the podcast model. I think it's really, really cool. And I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit more later on. But in a nutshell, so our mission's really clear and simple for HARDI. So to be clear, we are the distributor association in the industry. So that is our constituency, are the wholesale distributors. But not necessarily just independents. So we also even have factory distribution and obviously publicly traded and national and you name it. But it is making wholesale distribution the channel of choice for HVACR manufacturers and contractors, meaning you as a manufacturer have a whole lot of ways you could choose to get your product to the market. And we want wholesale distributors to be the biggest, best channel you work with, right? And contractors out there have any number of ways to get product, right? And we want them wanting to buy from the wholesale distributors out there versus all the other channels that may exist. So that's really simple. It's a really clear mission, and we spend a lot of time trying to figure out if we're moving the needle at all in that part. And if we see in examples where things are maybe some products we're losing some share, we'll dive in deep and say, what are the dynamics in this product category that's causing this, and what is it distributors need to be better at to get that share back?
So that's a great statement. So how do you help distribution step up their game, if you will? We've been there, we've seen it, we obviously are fans, but maybe some of our listeners aren't familiar with some of the things that you guys deliver. How do you get those distributors to step up their game and be better and to be the avenue of choice for the contractor?
Sure. Well, probably our longest serving product we've had is in the education space, professional development. We actually call it talent today. And so for any level within a wholesale distributor, we have professional development solutions for them. And it can be anywhere from a one-off online course all the way up to a full certification program, which includes intensive coaching, KPI tracking and improvement, those sort of things. The bottom line is the most important thing to a distributor is their customers, and the most effective way of making customers happy is having effective personnel. And so we try to be really close to the distributors in helping their people be the best that they can be in their market, so those contractors want to work with nobody else, right? So that's our longest standing value add. We've also been in the, I guess you call it benchmarking, market research, market intelligence realm for quite a while. And that is a huge business unit for us, because in our industry, there isn't a ton of data, frankly, and especially on the wholesale side. So you could be a wholesaler who's $5 million in revenue or $2 billion in revenue, and you're still kind of struggling to figure out, was my last month a good month, an average month, or a subpar month compared to the rest of the market, right? So that's our job, is to help figure that out. Going a little bit deeper, we do a lot more that's product specific. So especially on the mechanical products. So a distributor can understand, okay, am I gaining share or losing share in certain types of mechanical products, right? Am I kicking butt in the low end, but I'm getting killed on the high end? And by the way, was that my strategy or not? Maybe I'm okay with that, or maybe I'm not, right? So we give very detailed information on that. We also do a ton on economic forecasting, which, geez, over the last 2 years has been huge, right? And so, but what we do, the different than other groups, is macro is only so valuable, because all wholesaling is local, right? So getting a national forecast is a nice to know, but it doesn't move the needle in management decisions for wholesale distributors. What matters is what's going to happen in my local markets. And if I have 200 locations, that means I have 200 different forecasts, because those are all different market dynamics. So that's where we bring value, is we do the local demand forecasting. So we'll work with distributors on that. And then, the necessary evil, I guess you have to say, is the government relations. I don't think any group wakes up in the morning wishing that that's what they had to do, but it's important. We have to represent the interests of wholesale distributors and the broader industry, and we work very closely with the manufacturers, the contractors, but we spend an awful lot of time on regulatory and legislative affairs, and increasingly so on state affairs, which we didn't used to do very much of in the past.
Yeah,
So
I would like to circle back to that. I participated in the Congressional Flying a couple years ago, and we got a lot of value out of it, and we did see the level of effort that your team puts into it. I was very impressed, but I want to come back to that a little bit later. I don't want to overlook. So Matthew and I obviously are fans. We're also participants in some of the committees. Matthew's on the marketing committee. There's a nice HARDI socks, it looks like.
I'm wearing it. I'm wearing it.
And I'm on the supplier committee, and we find great value in that too. But can you tell us, obviously it's a distributor organization, HARDI, but you're letting others in, if you will, other parts of the touch points, the value chain, as I call it. Can you just elaborate a little bit on, why you bring in manufacturers and why you bring in reps and even service providers into the organization?
Yep. So we do a lot of research, as I mentioned to you, and consistently clear and away, by far, the #1 most important KPI for wholesale distributors is product availability, right? And you cannot have product if you don't have manufacturer, suppliers, the reps, those relationships, right? So the supplier community is incredibly important to us as an association. And by the way, we also acknowledge too, so you take AHRI, great friends, great partners of ours, but they have to be very focused on the systems, the mechanicals, the equipment side of it. But there's that whole swath of the rest of the industry that isn't the actual equipment, right? And you can't be a distributor without these things, right? You gotta have all these other products. So we find that oftentimes HARDI becomes kind of that second home to those component parts, pieces, tool type manufacturers as well. And so they're hugely important to us. And by the way, we tend to find that manufacturers like yourself and those types of manufacturers often are the ones most invested in their wholesale distributor channels as well. So that's, we got to make sure we're taking care of there, because if we're not doing the job for those types of core suppliers, then we really have a challenge as it relates to achieving our mission. So your input and feedback is very, very important to us.
Yeah, you alluded to some of the councils, both of you guys, and as Michael said, we both sit on a different one. I work with Chris, who does a great job, Chris DeBoer. He's the head of the marketing council, and I believe his position is sales and marketing director for HARDI. Great guy. I'm a fan of his, and I love being part of the marketing council. But again, I'm part of the supplier. I think I'm one of 2 supplier members that sit on the council, and our meetings, which we have monthly on Wednesdays towards the end of the month, are always a fascinating forum. I mean, we talk about what we can do as the marketing council, but there's always an interesting kind of feeling out the market from both sides in those meetings. It's really fascinating. We definitely share information, and it's sort of a funny. HARDI's a networking organization, and it's even like granular at the council level. We're doing that networking as well to sort of figure out what's going on just in general, and it's a really useful thing. So it's funny, and to go back to the council stuff, I know that what Chris has been working on and doing some stuff during this time, I think would be sort of remiss if we don't allude to what's going on in the world, right? So what has HARDI been doing differently? I know the answer to some of these questions, but I want to hear what you've got to say about pandemic response. How is the world different? I know that the Focus conference is scheduled for June. The annual is scheduled for December. Lord willing, those occur without a hitch. But I mean, the planning has got to be different. Day to day is a little bit different. Tell us a little bit about pandemic response and the crazy. Everything's upside down. So I'm sure it is in your world too.
The first 6 weeks of the pandemic shutdown, stay-at-home orders, all that sort of stuff was easily the hardest, most exhausting 6 weeks I've ever had professionally. And I can't even imagine what it must have been like for the members who were trying to figure out how to serve customers and take care of their employees. But for us, we felt an overwhelming pressure to help our members sift through all the noise and know what was important for them at that point in time and be able to take action without reading hours and hours of material, without having to, really boiling it down to this is what you need to know in a few bullet points, because if you don't know this, you could be really at risk, right? And I owe it to my team. I was hard on my team because most had never been through anything even remotely close to a crisis.
None of us have. Nobody alive has.
Like this,
Yeah.
not like.
And they were amazing. They were working 15 hours a day. They were turning around content almost within an hour, and I'm really proud of them. I think we were at the forefront of the content that a wholesale distributor or a key supplier in the industry needed to know how to operate and how to survive through that crisis. And so when you talk about pivoting, we've known, and we started a new strategic plan 2 years ago that was intended to further grow and diversify our value adds outside of the live events. What we didn't know is we were going to put that plan to the ultimate test literally 6 months into it, right? And that's basically what happened. And I tell you what, the team and the councils, our governance structure passed with flying colors. They were unbelievable. So now we at least feel more confident that we can be a strong, valuable, vibrant, sustainable organization, even if we can't have an in-person event for the foreseeable future, which 10 years ago I would have been very nervous about for our organization. So anyway, we talked earlier about content being king, and that's what we're really built on, is content you really can't get anywhere else, delivered in ways you can't receive it anywhere else, and timelier than anywhere else, right? And so that's our real model. And now events is just a part of that. So we desperately hope to be together in person down the road, but it's not the be all and end all of the association. It's not the only reason you're a member of HARDI.
Yeah, the last What's Happening Wednesday was about so I go to them when I can. Naturally, we discuss the topics and whatnot, and the last one was about text marketing, which is amazing because it's hands-free and was more about availability and updates and what's appropriate to text and who is appropriate to I mean, in terms of what's going on in the world, timely, it doesn't get timelier than that. I mean, hands-free, instantaneous data transfer. I mean, it was right on the money, and there's been a series of those. And of course, yeah, you got to register for them. It's not just come what may kind of thing. You got to register, you got to be part of it. And that's why we're, supporters and, and members. And
I would say too that during the real ugly months of COVID, I kind of saw the HARDI emails that would come out almost as a kind of like a beacon of light on what's going on. It was steady, it was consistent, it was, it gave direction and reassurance on what was going on in the industry. So we looked forward to that. You and your team provided a great service. It was almost, like I said, it was a reassurance that the industry was tight, that we would get through it. So you guys provided that almost moral support through that whole process. So thank you to you and your team for that.
Thank you. And one of the next evolutions on this have been more and more content that our distributors can actually repurpose for their customers, right? And some of it's even actually written for the customer contractor audience, so that distributor could hopefully brand it and then put it out there to them as another value add. So no, I really appreciate you saying that. I hope we never go through anything like that ever again. But it is so comforting to know that I got a team that can weather it if we ever had to.
Yeah, you got thumbs up to your team. Solid performance in an ugly time. No question.
It's funny. You're talking about go ahead.
No. Go ahead, Matthew.
Oh, please. I was gonna say content is king. HARDI is a film house now too. Yes. We saw I believe a draft of it at the annual, maybe in Austin. And then the next year, now it's out. You can watch it on Amazon. You see those guys walking around at the annual conferences. There's the star of the movie and stuff like that. So I mean, it's funny. It's webinars. It's it's web content. It's the analysis in the data-driven newsletter. It's all of the market research that goes into all of that stuff. it's cinema. I mean, HARDI is a really interesting wheel with many spokes on it, and you know, I mean, again, it is a pleasure to work with you guys just in general, and knowing that you guys are there for the support of the whole industry like that. I mean, the whole goal of the movie, if you guys are unfamiliar, is to generate new talent, young talent, into an industry that is often seen as a bit old-fashioned, and you know, the old guard makes the decisions and whatnot. And that ain't true. Says it very, very clearly.
Can you touch on that, Talbot? Tell us the premise and the production and everything, the efforts that you guys put into it. Can you tell us a little more about that?
Absolutely. So you're talking about our hot commodity documentary, and it really goes back to two people who deserve all the credit for it. Troy Meacham, who was a former chairman of the association from ACR Supply, very passionate about the industry and especially the need to attract talent into it. And then our own Chris DeBoer, who you had mentioned, Matthew, who leads our marketing and sales. Those two got to talking about this and then became obsessed. And the next thing you know, Troy actually introduced us to the Muddy Trails team that does the production. They're a beautiful, cute young couple who are so talented and work their butts off. By the way, shameless plug, all you distributors out there who like to do promo videos or lead-in videos to your dealer meetings, customer events, things like that, hire these guys, Muddy Trails. They are great to work with. They are fantastic. And by the way, we don't get any spiff off of that. So it's not, no, sorry. They're just great.
Matthew, we could put in, when we produce this, finish it off, maybe we could put in a link in the
Absolutely.
So the other plug that you're giving me here is that documentary is total open source, right? So basically anyone in the industry who wants access to it can have it, and we encourage you to repurpose it. And it can be, there are already like smaller snippets that you could excerpt, or if you want an excerpt that hasn't been snipped, we can pull that out for you. You can embed that into your recruiting websites and all that sort of thing. But it's meant to be a tool for the whole industry. We've said that also to the contractors and the contractor organizations. We actually invested a bunch more into it to add more contractor content into it for that community as well. But no, you nailed it. It's about people understanding that this isn't about attics and basements, right? This industry is a fantastic, dynamic industry where professionals who never do touch a wrench can have incredible careers in this industry. But if you like touching a wrench, not only can you have a great career, you may set yourself up to actually own your own business one day and have an extremely prosperous future. So no, really exciting, tons of passion in it, great people in the documentary, and I love that it resonated with you. It's one of the coolest things that I've been a part of since I've been in association management, period.
You can tell that you believe in it, and the way that I know that is because it vastly improved between drafts. So they showed it at Austin, and then the final copy had additions, and it was smoother, and the narrative was smoothed out. And I mean, when it was all said and done, polished, it wasn't just a let's put this together, blah 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 kind of thing. Well thought of, well produced, well intentioned, and the final product was lovely. I mean, great.
If our listeners or viewers have not seen it, go to the HARDI website, look it up. It is very well done.
I believe it's on Amazon Prime. I think you can get it on YouTube. I mean, that's compared to some of the the analytical stuff that is part of the membership package. This is one that let's spread it far and wide because of the truths that are in that. Somebody who when people ask me what I do, I got 10 years of classical piano. Of course, I market HVAC components now, right? But that's the point, right? There's something for everybody in this industry. You just got to find your niche.
Yep, absolutely. Great industry. I absolutely have fallen in love with the industry. Part of the reason I've been, as long as they keep me around, I will be here. I love it. It's a great group.
So that's a good segue into the next question, right? So I Googled you, and I'm looking, and I'm trying to find bio stuff on you, and I think one of the law firms you might have worked for just filed bankruptcy, and we'll not call names on them in 2016. I was doing a little Googling. You're nodding. Must have been accurate in my searching.
Because he left. That's why.
So yeah,
actually it's called an association management company. So there are companies out there that smaller organizations that can't afford their own staff like HARDI can would hire a management company to serve the staff functions for the association. And the sad story about that company is it was actually the world's first association management company, founded in my hometown of Philadelphia. And just a lot of good talent was born and bred there, but then left. And
that's the story, clearly, as we're talking with you guys and putting a sort of an obit on that one. But
yes.
What I was going to say is I couldn't find too much about Talbot the man. Michael was curious. You say you're from Philadelphia. Are you a Sixers fan? Tell us a little bit about yourself that we might not hear from the keynote stage.
Sure. So, I'm, besides being an international man of mystery, of course, which is why there's none of that I right. But yes, I grew up in the suburbs of Philadelphia. I'm all Philly. I'm all in on the 4 majors. Most notably my Philadelphia Eagles. I was a long-time season ticket holder, but once we moved to Ohio, I could only keep that going for about another 5 years. Then my kids with their sports got so busy, we couldn't get out there anymore to do it. In fact, it used to be when we had the old silent auction, I used to auction off a tailgate with me. And then so whoever won that could, we'd take an RV out there and we'd do a dinner the night before, the big tailgate with my old crew out there. Great time. So I love all the Philly stuff. My brother and my mother and my father are still out that way. Yeah, so I have 3 daughters, my prides and joy. And so one is a junior who's 16. I have a 7th grader who's 13, and I have a 4th grader who's 10. And my little 4th grader just completed their basketball season, undefeated, perfect season, champions of Central Ohio, and the first team for their school to have ever won a D1 championship. So
beautiful.
Congratulations.
What position does she play?
So she's it's funny. She's basically a guard. But she's kind of an aggressive bruiser. So she kind of does the dirty work and sets brutal picks and kills you on defense. Yeah.
Every team needs one. There's nothing wrong with that.
That's right.
Fantastic.
Let me change gears a little bit. There is an international component to HARDI. We're an international company. So tell us what you're doing internationally. I know there's been some increased activity down in Mexico, but what about elsewhere, Europe, elsewhere?
Sure. So HARDI was formed in 2003 when the refrigeration wholesalers and the warm air wholesalers merged, consolidated. And so we've had the I in HARDI ever since 2003, but it was predominantly Canadian members for the most part, right? And now we do have a handful of member companies in other parts of the world, Australia, Europe, Asia, and usually it's because they wanted access to some of the best practices, and they liked the fact that when they came to a HARDI event, if they took the travel all the way to the US, they were getting with manufacturer decision makers, which they never saw in their home countries, right? So that was a big value add. But Mexico was a long time coming. We'd been talking about this since 2008. And finally, the time was right. And we found Guy Messina, who is our executive director for our Mexico division, who is actually a Dominican by birth, but obviously fluent and knows Latin America, Mexico, Central America very, very well. And we've grown into actually the largest HVAC HARD association in Mexico already. And it's only 3 years old.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and so the purpose there, the mission is exactly the same as here. The only difference is the channel is basically unformed in Mexico. So then it's almost a little more aggressive actually creating that channel to be that channel of choice, right? There isn't that channel so clearly down there. And it's really been a fascinating experience. Not to mention during the crisis and everything, we had intel about production in Mexico that very few others actually had. And we were working really closely with the HRI. It was actually Guy and our members down there who were the ones who lobbied the Mexican government to get the Mexican industry deemed essential by their regulatory agencies. Then on top of it, I love this. Gee, who would have known? I don't know how he has the skill set, but he actually developed the paperwork that the manufacturers could use to certify that their production facilities met all the protocols, met all the regulatory requirements for their agencies down there, and it became the template for a ton of those companies. So we were talking to, Emerson and Nidec and the OEMs and everything all the time, and he organized calls where everyone was talking about, okay, this enforcement compliance officer in this state is more of a stickler on X, where on this state they're more stickler on Y. All this it was brilliant. It really was. It was amazing. And in the meantime, our distributors thrived because they were the ones who understood the value of holding inventory. That's what differentiates a HARDI distributor in Mexico from all those other companies that call themselves distributors but don't carry any inventory, right?
So yeah, Mike's applauding. That's a battle we fight. Yeah, that's our main tribulation in marketplace and stuff like that. So you're singing the song that we like to hear.
Yeah. So our guys had it. No one else did. So as tough of a year as last year was for Mexico, and frankly, somewhat continues to be right now, our guys still outperform the market considerably because they invested in having the product, right? And so we think that's going to keep growing. And frankly, we're already getting opportunities. We've added members from Central and South America who just want to be a part of the division. And we're hoping down the road, maybe we'll have enough infrastructure to where we can actually have Mexico, Central America, maybe South America and stuff down the road.
How about the other side of the pond, moving towards Europe? They're a little bit more established of a market, but I'm not sure if they have an organization such as yours.
Back in the day, we used to partner a little bit with Fest over there and some of the European organizations. But you're right, the channels are very different over there, and they're consolidated and a lot of products going through the very few channels over there. So to be honest with you, for us, the numbers don't make a ton of sense for us to do a big investment over there. I actually could see us doing more in Asia before we would do something in Europe, because there also channels are evolving and developing, and they're getting to a scale where wholesale distribution makes sense, right? Like, Europe actually is going the other way, where you could almost argue the wholesale distribution channel starts making less sense as things continue to shrink and consolidate. Asia, South America, Central America blowing up, even North Africa, Arab states, all those areas, there's a lot of market growing there. So I could see us expanding in those areas first before we would do anything in Europe.
So we're looking at like annual conference in Dubai in 2024. Something like that, right?
Is that on the bucket list, Matthew? Is that why you're bringing that up?
I'm not. I don't want to tease anyone too much, but you shouldn't be surprised if you see a significant event in Mexico within the next few years.
Beautiful.
It only makes sense. And by the way, I would be very surprised if it were one of the tourist resorts like Cancun. It's going to be where the members and the customers are, right? It's going to be something cool that an American tourist maybe wouldn't have normally seen or known. And by the way, I should tie the knot on this one. Another value out of that division and a rationale for why we do it is we know a lot of manufacturers in the US also, frankly, don't have the resources to devote to Mexico. They know they want to sell there. They know there's opportunities to grow there, but they don't really have real robust executive leadership down there or infrastructure. So we want to create an organization that helps streamline that engagement of American manufacturers in Mexico. And this is the biggest opportunity I see for the supplier side, because frankly, there's only been a handful who have really jumped in with 2 feet, and they're reaping the benefits for having done so.
Yeah, that's interesting side note there. And it's something that is, since I know that you have an organization down there, that's kind of in the back of the mind, is can we leverage the relationships and the inroads that your team has made?
Absolutely.
Sure. And I'll say that we're a heating company, so try to expand northward where there's snow. That's it.
Well,
Up in the Nunavut territory.
Yes, exactly. You know, Siberia. I don't know.
So
Hey, there's hot water. You need hot water, even in Mexico.
They do. They do.
we're great friends with both HRAI and CIPH. Ralph Supa and Sandy McLeod are good friends. I respect them. They are very, very talented association professionals. Their organizations do really good work up there. Our wholesalers are members of those organizations too. We collaborate at least 4 times a year with those groups on things. And HRAI licensed quite a bit of our content, especially for education and development programs up there. So yeah, it's a tough market, very competitive, tough market up there. So
Sure.
yeah, anything suppliers can do to help them out would be great.
Indeed, indeed. So the future cast of perhaps an annual international is a type of prediction. How about, and this is a term Michael used, wild ass guesses?
Mm-hmm.
What do you got in terms of industry predictions, guesses, hunches, thoughts, feelings as we, you know, the more of us get vaccinated and, you know, the weather starts warming up, et cetera, et cetera. What you got in the crystal ball?
So I think you're probably looking at a tale of 2 halves when you're looking at 2021. So you're going to have the first half of 2021, which on one hand will continue to enjoy the benefits of a lot of the work from home policies, which really benefited the industry last year. An important note, and we're always clear to communicate this, it wasn't great for everybody, that's for certain. But for about 60% of the market who are in that upper middle, upper class area, it actually that was the strength for the HVACR industry. These are people who worked from home, did not have income disruptions, did not have wealth disruptions, but were home. And so if there was any issue with their system, they weren't having it, right? They were going to get that thing fixed, replaced, upgraded quick, fast, and in a hurry. And they're also the ones who would upgrade in things like IAQ, which was just a niche market before last year, and now it's bigger. Now, unfortunately, there's still that 35-40% of the market where, you know, work from home meant you didn't have a job, right? And it really affected incomes and it really affected them. So one thing we tell all of our members is, again, all wholesaling is local. Make sure you clearly understand the demographics of your respective territories, because they could be 10 miles apart having vastly different experiences. And you're going to have one that's heavily repair placed, patchwork, too much duct tape, and the other side, which is going to be high-end replacements and you can't get enough equipment, right? So anyway, that first half of the year, except for, I mean, we were off to a phenomenal start last year. And then, of course, all the breaks went on for, you know, March, April, and much of May. So comps are going to be relatively easy for most of the country for the first half of the year. Then you're going to get to the second half of the year where the comps are going to be brutal, right? I mean, we're talking about historically strong months for our industry. And the only thing that repressed growth was product availability. That's it. I mean, we estimate at least 5% market growth was prevented just from product availability issues. And so comps are going to be tough. So I just spoke to a member's contractors in a dealer meeting last week, and I told those contractors, I said, beware of straight line forecasting. Beware of straight line forecasting. Make sure you understand very carefully the differences month to month, week to week. And the way you forecast in April should look dramatically different than how you forecast in July. And if you try to straight line off July's numbers, you're probably going to overextend yourself and probably going to be pretty disappointed at the end. That being said, we still think we can actually still grow the market in the second half of the year, but we're talking about going from double digits to low single digits, and everyone just needs to be okay with that, right? Now, the other thing, and you guys can weigh in on this from the manufacturing side, is the product availability issues and lack of predictability in lead times. It looks like that's going to be a throughout 2021 type issue. We thought initially that a lot of that might get worked out before the end of the second quarter, but there's more and more indications now that that's likely to continue to be disrupted for a while. And part of it is because manufacturers, especially equipment manufacturers, are having to adapt to unprecedented ordering patterns by distributors now, right? So their own forecasting and procurement is all over the place. We do a lot of work for the OEMs, by the way. They'll work with us, they'll hire us to help them refine their own forecast. So we do proprietary projects with them to get into the weeds, to help them understand where the disruptions may be in ordering and that sort of thing. But to boil this all down, we do not see a demand issue though. So demand's not going to be the issue. It's going to be external constraints like product availability, transportation and shipping issues, things like that. Commercial will continue to struggle in much of the market, but our biggest regions in the middle of the country, actually we have pretty bearish, bullish outlooks on the commercial recovery in those segments. It's going to be kind of the big traditional urban centers that are going to have the harder time.
Say that because I was meeting with my team about commercial, and we actually have a call later today about commercial business, and we're expecting the market to be tight, but we see upside opportunity for us. Yeah. And to your point, yeah, there are a lot of other manufacturers right now that are struggling with raw material shortages. We're lucky enough in our space, you know, knock on wood, that we're pretty set. We're not expecting any shortages, and so we're hoping that we could take advantage of what's going on in the marketplace to drive some more demand for our products. So we've got our fingers crossed, hoping that we have some favorability there.
So I don't want to, you know, kiss Joel's ass too much, but our CEO has been on top of this since the beginning. We are benefited by having, you know, board of directors in Europe who kind of had a little bit of the pandemic stuff ahead of our time in the States, and we get, you know, the benefit of hindsight in their respect as well. But from day one, Joel and the rest of the team, as it cascades down, he's our CEO, of course. You must know him. He, you know, we implemented like all kinds of health policies, but in addition to that, we've invested in a larger warehouse to house more inventory, and we've tried to be ahead of it in that respect. So I mean, we've been
as I say, with any disruption, there is opportunity. So how do we position ourselves to take advantage of that disruption? It's not pleasant, right? This past year has not been pleasant in too many ways at all, but with that disruption, there's ways to do things differently and improve, and we're all about that, you know, continuous improvement.
So if we could just build on this, because this is really important, because first off, 2 years ago, we issued research that said product availability was your most important attribute as a wholesale distributor, and everyone's like, no, duh, right? Like, okay, obvious. Well, guess what happened in 2020 when distributors panicked? Some distributors panicked, frankly, and you know what they came out knowing? Inventory is king, right? Like, it's funny, we were meeting earlier.
And cash is king. Cash
well,
inventory
that was
king.
exactly our discussion. That was our discussion this morning. Right now, I'd argue product's more valuable than cash. I mean,
yeah, maybe.
You know, and so there's a couple lessons that came out of 2020 that the manufacturers need to be aware of, because the distributors have taken this to heart. Is obviously inventory really is the most important thing, right? But then secondly, even in a pandemic, summer comes, right? It may not be the hottest one ever, but summer still comes. Like, you still need cooling in the summer, even if there's a pandemic happening, right? So just basic lessons here, but it's changing the way distributors are approaching inventory. And by the way, even though there's a lot in the news right now about you know, some positive signs for the economy that are causing maybe some projections for some inflation, a little uptick in interest rates, we don't see anything in the deck that makes it a material change. In other words, money is going to remain cheap. And in fact, we're working with some of our distributors, helping them in their banking discussions, because their banks don't understand why they need to stretch and push their credit lines to have more inventory now than they've ever had before. They don't get it, but we dump so much data on them that it's a no-brainer. They're like, it'd be stupid for this business not to take more credit to get this inventory.
Another shameless plug for what HARDI can do for a distributor, right?
And beyond that, what I'm going to do here is probably clip out that 3 minutes and send that to every one of our customers.
As a separate group. Yeah, that's awesome.
Make sure that testimonial for, I mean, that wasn't a plug for our company. It was a plug for business practice, basically. Which, you know, I mean, sometimes that lesson needs to be learned too, and some people learn the hard way. I mean, if I was a distributor and I saw my guy go across the street because I couldn't meet his need, that would be heartbreaking. So, right. I mean, you got to make sure you got to head that off at the pass, you know.
Yep, that's our 2009 research. That's called a critical selling event. Critical selling event is basically the only thing that can truly trigger the loss of a traditional customer, right? And so then your job as a distributor is A, to avoid them, and B, to be aware of them when your competitors have them, so you can take it.
Yep.
All right.
So with that said, let me change gears, if I can, to the Congressional Flying. Eye-opening to me. Did it 2 years ago. It actually led to some activity afterwards, which I can touch on, I guess, with our with our representative coming into the factory, actually.
Awesome.
So in your words again, what is the Congressional Flying? What are some of your current, if you personally remember them, what are some of the major objectives that you are trying to accomplish?
Sure. Well, first off, forgive a little tear coming in the eye. Unfortunately, we won't have the full flying in 2021, and it's because they're not opening the congressional buildings to the public until after Memorial Day. And in our industry, people are a little busy after Memorial Day, so we're going to hold off on that. However, what we are going to do is after they reopen the buildings, and we get everyone a chance to kind of get settled in a little bit, we're gonna organize some very targeted strategic meetings. So we're gonna target maybe a few new members of Congress or new leadership or people who have taken on new committee roles. And what we'll do is we'll invite members who are constituents of those members to come out and do a really targeted set of fly-ins, right? So we will have some face-to-face for members to take advantage of in 2021, but we're going to wait till, like I said, the dust settles a little bit and we can be very targeted and strategic with it, with this new Congress. 2022 though, we're back to the moon. We'll have the full event. So obviously the biggest thing that happened late last year was finally getting the AIM Act passed, which gives us that national certainty on the refrigerant transition, the HFC phase down and refrigerant transition, and bought us a little extra time. This gives states like California more solace in slowing down and giving us a little more time to manage this transition, and also to do so nationally, because doing it in piecemeal was going to be a mess, frankly. And by the way, I think most people now have come to realize exactly how big this transition is really going to be. And we just weren't prepared. There was just no way, with all the code changes that were going to be necessary, not just building codes, energy codes, but also fire codes. That's a lot to do. Those wheels turn very slowly in those parts. So that was our biggest legislative win really last year. But then, also getting aspects in the CARES Act funding. We had some wins in some of that, not only in the small business stuff, which the whole small business community was working on, but in the latest bill, we got $82 billion of funding for HVACR upgrades for public school districts and charter school districts across the country. And it's basically a no strings attached funding that's going directly to each school district. And so it's up to our industry to take advantage of this. Leverage those relationships in your community, get to those school districts, influence their use of those funds. This is the time. I mean, how many schools have we said, man, they desperately needed to upgrade their system, or their definition of IEQ was opening windows, right? Like, I mean, there's a lot of opportunity here, and I mean, you're just not going to have this happen many times where $82 billion gets spread across all these districts and just lands there with the administrators have the authority to decide what to do with it.
Right.
Indeed,
so, yeah,
indeed.
I was very impressed with just the level of organization. You had, I believe, a senator that came in and talked to us for breakfast. We were actually able to get our House Representative, Mr. Paul Tonko, to do a plant a plant visit to talk about codes and standards, take a look at what we do. It was just a real excellent event, and the follow-up to it was really good as well.
Great. Excellent. Shout out to Palmer Schoening and Alex Ayers. Fantastic. Palmer knows everyone on the Hill, and Alex is literally like a walking encyclopedia of small business tax and HVACR policy. It is ridiculous. It is ridiculous.
Amazing.
I'm sure we could turn it into a drinking game or something to quiz them on it, but it's great.
So we're coming up to the top of the hour here. We've touched on all kinds of heady topics, from economics, the pandemic, the ins and outs of the HVACR, like everything under the sun here. We can't thank you enough, Talbot, for joining us here. So let's close it out with a softie.
Okay.
Michael and I have sat in the audience where we literally look up at you. When you sit there and you give we're literally looking up at you, and you come out there and you give your speeches as the CEO of this company that does this organization that does great things for a wide variety of things, branching out internationally.
Yeah.
So when it's time to so I guess the soft one is, who inspires you?
Oh, great question. Wow. Well, okay, this will sound like the cheesiest cop-out ever. It really will. But I tell you what, like getting to know owners, CEOs, leaders of mostly privately held companies, many of them family business rooted, is the coolest thing anyone should ever get a chance to do, right? So I mean, that motivates us maybe more than anything else. I mean, when you have an owner or CEO or whoever who calls you, and like they'll literally tell you, I have a 7-figure decision to make and I need your help, right? Like that gets you up in the morning, right? That's great. And then you take it to the other end. We have Carlton Harwood from Ferguson is on our board, and he leads their HVAC division. This is an $18 billion company, right? Who has a sizable HVAC division, but now this has been 3 times over the times I've been here where someone has ascended to the role to lead that division who really didn't have a ton of experience in the HVAC division. And how humble are they to call me and say, how can you help me learn the intricacies of the HVACR side of the business? And again, we're talking about a division that's billion plus, right? I mean, like, this is not a small enterprise. So that motivates you, that gets you going. And then on the supplier side, we've had suppliers who came to us almost as mature startups, and then 5-10 years later are multi-million-dollar ventures doing business with the biggest distributors in our market segment. And I tell you what, like, I feel like they'd give me a kidney if I needed it, right? Like, because we're that part. So that's what motivates me. It's a maybe kind of a silly analogy, but that's what we think about every time something hits us that may be a threat or an opportunity. Is how does this affect those types of companies, right? How big of a deal is this? How big of a risk or an opportunity is it? And then how do we turn on that as quickly as possible? That's what gets us going.
That's a pretty good answer. Pretty good answer. And it's a very conversation that Matthew and I have all the time. It's an intrinsic motivator there, an intrinsic driver. So a 30-second speed round, and then we'll let you go. In the last 5 years, who's your favorite keynote speaker?
Oh, wow. Well, first off,
Matthew as well.
Props to Kevin O'Leary, by the way, at our virtual summit. That was maybe the most fun I've had for one of these sessions. But I'd probably have to say Kevin Ma from the MIT grad, blackjack card counting aficionado, was probably my favorite, just from a personal entertainment factor. I still carry his card with the little cheat sheet when I'm in Vegas, to gamble. So that was a great one. Emily Saving, by the way, deserves all the credit for these.
You guys have great keynotes.
She does all of it, and she's amazing. She does a great job, knocks it out of the park time and time again.
I hope
So
you don't
I
take
was-
mine, Pryce.
No,
Who
no,
did-
no. I was gonna say that one of my fondest memories from the Hardy was going up on stage with the magician. I believe you, Mike,
Oh,
was sitting next to me.
Ving. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was asking for volunteers, and Michael just like volunteered me, and then I went up there, and it was, you know, funny little bit up there, whatnot. And but I personally, Michael and I share our favorite keynote, and I mean, it was super touching. I'll let Mike describe it. And
Hopefully it's the same one you're thinking, but it was different, out of left field. It was
so actually,
Platon.
before you start, we were always guessing. We were like, who's this going to be? What's it going to be? It was somebody who probably had some mixed reception in the crowd, but Michael and I loved it.
Yeah, I mean, he was just he came at the angle from like way out of left field and just.
I don't think he said his name yet.
What's that?
Did you say his name? Do you know who he's talking about?
Platon.
Oh, okay.
The famous photographer. It was a very inspiring message, a humble, moving message. And just the way he looks at it as I would say an artist was fascinating to me, on how he tied the artistry of what he does to industry. And I thought different, but that one stands out for me as being an interesting one.
That's a great call. And our man, Chris DeBoer, had so much fun teasing that one, because we knew if you knew the name, you could Google it and it would ruin the whole thing. Yeah.
I mean, that guy was spellbinding. I mean, you go to enough of these events, and we see you, Talbot, at other events that are around, that there are speakers. I mean, I can remember distinctly, I was in Vegas for an Adobe conference, and Drew Brees was the speaker, and it was like, I mean, it was so boring. I couldn't even. I couldn't describe it. It was like,
everyone would agree with that, but
I mean, he wasn't even talking about football. He was talking about nothing. I didn't even know. It was Drew Brees. He won the Super Bowl. Here he is. Hooray! Then you get Platon up there. And I mean, you're just hanging on every word. I mean, that was so well constructed, so well organized. I mean, the guy is a professional in every sense of a word. I mean, I won't forget. I just won't forget those feelings. I mean, it was chilling, spellbinding to listen to that man talk about his art and his process, and then show. I mean, God, the photos that he's taken over the years, just unbelievable stuff. That's the kind of experience that we hope to reclaim. At HARDI Dubai 2026, or hopefully sooner than that.
Well, all right. With that said, go ahead.
I'm glad we spent some time acknowledging M and the program development on all that stuff. And by the way, what you're also referencing is core to her model also, that you guys know the conference is grueling. I mean, it's a ton of content, and she's like, you can't just keep beating them over the head. You gotta give a session that gives them a second to take a step back, gain some perspective, relax a little bit, and what you're talking about is exactly what her intent is, giving that frame of mind and that little extra juice in what is a long, hardworking event. Yeah, absolutely.
And the food is always too.
Oh yeah, clear.
Yeah, for sure. With that said, we're gonna kind of close it down here. I guess a quick message: if you are a distributor, a rep, a competitor, not so much a competitor, because we don't want to give them any tips. But if you do not currently belong in the HARDI organization, get your ass in, because there is a ton to learn, a ton of interesting topics and networking. It is definitely a benefit to you and to the HVAC industry. So Talbot, thank you. And for the rest of our listeners, please stay tuned.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to episode 3 of the Mechanical Room. I have to say, Matthew, that was quite an interview with Talbot. I know both you and I are fans of HARDI and fans of groupies of Mr. G, but it was some fascinating information there. And for me, what kind of stands out living through the pandemic of 2020 was kind of in the heat of it, when there was so much uncertainty in what was going on. HARDI stepped up. They really did, as Talbot said. And for me, they became almost kind of like a grounding voice, a beacon of light to step the industry through what is, the overused, unprecedented times. But it truly was. And it was, they brought an element of stability, an element of, foresight. So I thank Talbot for joining us, but I also thank the entire staff at HARDI for getting the industry through what was a pretty tumultuous time.
Yeah, no question. I mean, Talbot was a great guest. You can tell he's a pro. He does. There was at no point was he stumbling or coming up with he had the answers, and they all were strong. And it's probably, you know, it's due in part to HARDI's preparedness, their professionalism, the way they tackle any problem and address any issue, let alone, you know, this sort of unique one that we're all looking at in, you know, over the last year and a half, whatever. So yes, thank you, HARDI. Yes, thank you, Talbot. And I think that's a wrap on episode 3. Check it here on Anchor, check on Spotify, look on any place that you get your streaming content for The Mechanical Room. We'll be back next month with more great guests. Tag your photos, and we'll see you soon.